fuck are you doing in my house?
That is the scariest fucking thing I have ever seen in my entire life.
It was hot in that thing anyway. Yes. Looking at my channel, I think it's fair to say that I've had a notable focus on horror games from my Silent Hill 3 video, my Resident Evil 4 video, my currently ongoing Alien Isolation Let's Play, and 3 videos on Resident Evil 8, and that's not even out yet. And not that I need to justify myself, but I'm going to anyway because I want to, not because I have a crippling need to explain everything that doesn't actually need justification. For me personally, horror is one of the best genres in video games that allows the developers and the creators to let their imaginations run wild, unfettered, and not having to worry about things like a silly moral compass or censorship stunting their vision and in turn stunting our gameplay experience. I mean, there are horror games out there that have a teen rating or a PEGI 16 rating, and they only rely on tension and jump scares. And 9 times out of 10, the tension comes from the anticipation of the jump scare, and not from anything like atmosphere or gameplay. FNAF. Sorry. But we also have a veritable smorgasbord of truly amazing horror games that cater to all fans across the spectrum. From your casual zombie game, all the way up to your blood-soaked gore fest that all of those closeted psychopaths can enjoy from their padded cells. We've got vampire games, we've got zombie games, we've got survival horror, we've got action horror, we've got Lovecraftian adventures, we've got psychological torture. If you're too much of a cathole to finally nut up and play one of these games, all you have to do is just say, "Fuck it," and crack on. The best horror experiences come from a mixing of the genres and strike a perfect balance that gives you just enough of everything you need to achieve those adrenaline dumps and get those dopamine highs you crave for surviving a virtual threat. And if you want a prime candidate that ticks all of the boxes for everything I've just listed here, then I invite you to read the title again as we let out a cry of fear. Sorry. Cry of Fear was suggested to me by a personal friend of mine who wishes to remain unnamed. And so, to honour Michael's wishes, I shall refer to my anonymous friend as... Gith. Or would it be Jith? And so, just for you, Jiff, let's talk about Cry of Fear. Also, I decided on Jiff. Jiff is funnier, but GIF is correct. Cry of Fear follows Simon Henriksen, who while on his way home was run down by a car after attempting to help a seemingly injured man crawling along the floor. Some time passes and Simon finds himself waking up in an alleyway in a seemingly abandoned city similar to Stockholm. Inhabiting the streets and the hallways and corridors of this game are many different types of creatures that Simon will have to combat over the course of his journey. Now, this game does boast 25 enemies total, but it should be noted that 1 or 2 of these enemies are exclusive to the co-op mode, which I just could not get to work for the life of me. And like any good horror game, most of the enemies Simon goes up against represent certain aspects of his life and his personality, while others represent the situation he's currently in. Like the beautiful specimen Flygar, who's restrained to the bed itself, similar to how asylums and mental health wards may restrain patients who are having an aggressive episode. Or Citalopram, who is literally just named after an antidepressant which Simon could be taking, and considering everything he's gone through, can't blame him. The enemies aren't the only thing in this game that can cause unrest. Cry of Fear is one of the best examples of how atmosphere, sound design and level design are also able to drive up your anxiety even when nothing's going on. Take this one part for example. As soon as you hear that door shut behind you for a second time, you immediately start to panic and start rushing through the maze-like corridors. This is quickly followed by a few new brown stains when the chainsaw revs up, and you don't even check to stop if you're in danger, and I'll never tell. One of the main mechanics Cry of Fear centers itself around is combat. Unlike most other horror games of the time, Cry of Fear actually gives you loads of options for self-defense and fighting off the creatures you're going to come up against. I mean, we're talking handguns, shotguns, rifles, knives, police batons, and if you beat the game with certain conditions met, you get a really powerful hatchet as well. Another cool mechanic the game introduces is the ability to dual wield almost any single-handed items, be it a handgun and the phone for its flashlight, a gun and a knife if you want close range and mid-range combat options, or even 2 melee weapons if you're an absolute mad lad. And to stop you from becoming a one-man army on the streets of not Stockholm, the game limits your inventory space to 6 items like many of the other good survival horror games before it. You have your backpack and your pockets with 3 extra slots for quick swap items, so you don't have to keep dipping in and out of the inventory if you want to swap between guns, knives and light sources. And while you should always have something at your disposal to help you fight with, hopefully, you aren't entirely without defensive options either. Say you want to get stuck into the melee combat but don't fancy getting kissed on the lips by a hammer, you do have a dodge ability. This is activated by either double tapping any of the directional keys or by holding Alt and then pressing W, A, S or D. It does pay to be aware of your surroundings, especially if you're in combat in something like a tight corridor or if you're trying to dance around scaffolding, as sometimes the collision can jank out a bit and you will get stuck on corners and edges. And while we're on the subject of walls and edges, you can usually find them attached to things like walls and buildings, and you can find plenty of walls and ceilings in the environments you come across in the game, and there are many places to explore. I won't go over them all here, but a few notable ones do include the subways and the sewers under the streets, the parks that you visit and its surrounding streets complete with a treasure hunt, a soul-destroying pitch black forest, and probably my favourite location from the whole game right at the start, the apartment buildings. And while it might not sound super exciting, for me, this is where the game truly starts and is actually a really good tutorial for what you're going to experience and go up again in later events during the game. You start in a claustrophobic corridor with an absolutely horrifying note left on the ground, left by an individual the community has lovingly given the title of the Apartment Predator, who, as his name implies, is just a teeny bit fucked in the head. Making your way through the apartments, you catch sounds of children crying, bloodstains on walls and doors, enemies popping out from under the beds and behind doorways. They break down the doors, there's bodies hidden in the ceiling. And after you take a key from a body in a bathtub, there's weirder shit going on, don't question this. The world starts to warp and change into a somehow more hellish landscape as you now descend into the depths of the sick apartments to fight the boss and end the level. Just in this one location that many people would otherwise see as insignificant lays so many seeds of mystery which leaves you asking so many questions. We see a snuff film of a guy sat in a chair while another guy cuts his head off with garden shears. And I mean, that's not how that works, but it begs the question, is the guy using the shears the apartment predator? Is the guy in the chair the apartment predator, and the guy with the shears is the parent or a relative of one of the predator's victims and they're just getting revenge? But much like everything else this game gives you in terms of its background and lore, nothing's for certain. And it fits. Cry of Fear wraps itself around some really heavy themes, and sometimes they can be super cryptic and niche, or sometimes they can be very blatant and on the nose with their intention. I mean, we're talking about things like depression, anxiety, the fear of rejection, psychological trauma, paranoia, potential drug abuse, and stalking. I could go on listing all of the subject matter this game tries to take on, but this video would be very long and very boring. I mean, I could talk about how the human condition and psyche is programmed for self-destruction, or how societal standards had led us to need to live a Kardashian lifestyle, which in turn leads us down a deep hole of self-loathing and hatred, which brings us full circle back to the pre-programmed self-destruction of the human nature. But again, I think that'd be too serious and boring. I mean, when I do videos like this, I talk complete crap anyway, and all that video would be is just me talking complete crap while pretending I have some kind of PhD in brain science. I think one of the most surprising things about this game is if you've ever read about this game, if you've seen anyone play it on YouTube, or you've played it yourself, you're more than likely to know that this game was actually just a total conversion mod for Half-Life 1 back in 2012. And while it does carry over some of the jank from the old engine, like the collision issues or how some areas require some really finicky crouch jumping, the few serious issues I did have with this game comes from how some areas have way too many enemies in them, which on higher difficulties where enemies have almost tripled their health and ammo is very scarce, this can lead to moments of frustration, and frustration's never fun. A small nitpick is how it takes multiple clicks of the mouse to get out of iron sights mode or into iron sights mode if you've just fired the gun. Again, it's only a small nitpick, but it is a pain in the bum. And this one might just be me from not growing up playing PC games or Half-Life, but I can't stand the crouch jumping in this game and how Simon seems to slide along walls when trying to do things like enter vents but your angle's just slightly off, or trying to jump through that one bloody bus window.
Jumped right on through and I can't. Like, jump, crouch, jump, crouch, jump, crouch. God damn it! I don't know how!
All of this comes to a head in one section of the game where you're trying to escape from a train wreck, but because of how finicky the crouch jumping is and the placement, and if the game actually registers that you got through this one gap, again, it can lead to frustration, and again, frustration just isn't fun. But ultimately, like I said, these are only the 3 real issues I had with the game, and they're few and far between. The large amount of enemies in areas only really happens in maybe like 4 or 5 locations in the game. The iron sights thing is probably just me being really pedantic and just impatient. And the train wreck scenario only happens once in the entire game, but with how infrequent you actually have to crouch jump in this game, it's another minor inconvenience. Now you might have noticed that I have not touched the plot at all since the little intro bit I did at the beginning of the video. And that's because I wholeheartedly believe this is a game you should experience all on your own, either through downloading it free from Steam and playing it yourself, or living vicariously through someone else and watching their Let's Play. I would highly recommend Markiplier's playthrough, link in the description below. I mean, the story is a real mindfuck at points, and there are even some key moments the player can make choices on which will affect the ending, giving you one of 5 possible endings. But I will say that they are quite out of the way decisions to make that you likely wouldn't think would be a decision at all. And after the plot's over, depending on how you did, you might have noticed there are a few unlockables for you to play around with. These range from bonus weapons to bonus costumes. They can make subsequent playthroughs easier if you want to go to... Shit, the bed! My camera didn't fall over, shut up. The unlockables can be anything from bonus weapons and items to bonus costumes. They can make subsequent playthroughs easier if you're trying to get some other unlockables, or they can just turn the entire experience into a fun little romp through Sweden. With the unlockable weapons being very reminiscent of Resident Evil and Silent Hill, and the unlockable costumes being very reminiscent of Silent Hill 3 specifically. In fact, this whole game could be compared to Silent Hill, and has been many times by many people. The atmosphere and the locations are similar to places found in the original Silent Hill games. The abandoned streets just like the streets of Silent Hill. The apartments just like the apartment building in Silent Hill 2. Even the late game Asylum could be compared to Brookhaven Hospital. Both games have strong underlying themes and tackle deep, hard-hitting issues. Both games have a buttload of symbolism, symbology, and cryptic metaphorical representations and shit. Really, comparing Cry of Fear to Silent Hill is one of the best compliments you could give this game. And it's not just me giving this praise. Again, many people across the board have said the exact same thing with very good reason. Any praise and respect that Cry of Fear gets, for me, I feel is well deserved. And for me personally, it's a 9 out of 10 game, I'd say. Hello, and welcome to the end of the video. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. It's just been a mad week here in the UK. But yeah, this was 3 out of 4 of the requested games that viewers like yourselves have requested. If you have any games you'd like to hear me talk about or give my absolutely turd opinion on, just let me know down below. So we've got a lot more spare time coming up. I've got some video ideas that I want to get done. I've got the Alien Isolation Let's Play to carry on as well. If you like what you see and you want to see more of it, give it a like, give it a subscribe if you fancy. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!